If you have a small daycare or are thinking about opening a small daycare, it can be really hard sometimes figuring out the best way to maximize a really small daycare space. Since I have a relatively small daycare space, I thought I would share my tips for how I've made it work for me and my daycare for the past 3.5 years, and I want to share them with you today. Hey guys, my name is Sarah and I'm an in-home childcare provider to up to 10 kids under age 5, and I love putting out videos for fellow childcare providers as well as videos about working mom life, how I balance it all, how I crush my dreams, how I stay organized, and everything that goes into being a working mom. So if you like that kind of content, make sure you subscribe, and we would love to have you as part of our Glue Stick family. I have a relatively small daycare space. If you want to see some daycare tours to see my whole space, I will link those below. And I recently just did a whole house tour so you can see how we balance personal space as well as daycare space in our 4-level, multi-level home. Now, my daycare takes up the bottom 2 levels of my home, but we do also go upstairs to eat meals and that kind of thing. But our main areas for daycare are the level I'm on right now, and then our basement, which is 1 level lower. And all of the levels on our house are relatively small because it is a 4-level house, so it's not like 4 floors, it's a multi-level house, so it's like you go back, forth. And this means that there's no one level with like a ton of space. And so I had to be really creative about how I maximize the space. The room we're in right now, which is my main daycare area, is pretty small considering sometimes I have up to 10 kids in here. But there are lots of things I have done to really maximize that space, and that's what I'm going to be sharing with you guys today. My very first tip, whether you're already doing daycare or you're starting to do daycare planning, is to buy furniture that is easily movable that you can rearrange. I don't know about you guys, but one of the best things I have done is have furniture I can move around, because I like to switch things up, especially in the winter when we're stuck inside a lot of the time. I like to adapt my space, move things around, and it's more fun for the kids if you switch things up from time to time. It reinvents the space, makes it feel fun, and you can make it adapt to different situations. So instead of like a super heavy wooden table, we have these more plasticky tables that I can easily move around with chairs I can stack and put away if need be. I have, our play kitchen is the plastic one. I can move up here from the basement if I want to. I have really easy IKEA chairs that are easy to move around that I can sit in. And then we have a few of the IKEA Calyx units that have, you can put bins in, so I can move them around in the basement. I can bring them up here and kind of divide the room with those and switch things out. I've switched up my space so much over the years, and it's been so easy because everything is easily movable and adaptable, and I'd highly encourage you, if you have a small space, to do the same. If you are in a small space, vertical storage is your friend. I make use, as you can see, even just where I'm standing right now, I make use of vertical storage. You don't want to have everything just low to the ground or horizontal. You want to really maximize your wall space. And so we have utilized every nook and cranny that we possibly can. I have, storage units that I can use. I've even used our mantle to put stuff on. We built in bookshelves along on each side of the fireplace that had a little alcove when we moved in. We put shelves there. I added shelving on top of a desk in our laundry room to maximize that space, because you're not going to be able to get more storage space horizontally unless you add on to your house. But there's so much potential on the vertical axis for your house to really utilize that space. Now, I'm not saying fill up every nook and cranny with storage, but, maximize your space. We have our preschool wall. I've really maximized that for learning purposes, and then the rest of the space is really storage, and it's worked really, really well, even though I'm in a small space, to have everything I need because I maximize that vertical space. When you are trapped indoors, whether it's a rainy day, hurricane season, tornado season, or if you're like me in Minnesota where it's snowy half the year, you really want there to be light coming into your space. A lot of daycares are in the basement, and so there's always limited light in those areas if you have especially an older home. But try to find creative ways to let light into your space. I am super duper blessed to have like a whole wall of windows in my main daycare space, which helps tremendously in the winter. But there are other ways to bring in light as well. We actually added recessed lighting in our daycare space. There wasn't any before, and just that helps so much, especially when it gets dark really early in the nighttime, to have extra lights in here. We painted our ceiling white. It actually was wooden beams, so that's another idea. Or if you have like a drop down ceiling, paint it all white so your eye isn't really drawn toward the ceiling. You can add wall lights, lamps, you know, obviously kid-friendly ones that they're not going to pull down, but you can add lights to your space to make it lighter and brighter, paint it a lighter color, add white trim instead of dark trim in your space, have lighter colored furniture, you know, the list goes on, but just try to make it really light and happy so you don't feel like you're in this like cavern, especially if it's small. It's going to feel a lot darker with just a few dark pieces, whereas if you have some lighter colored things, it's going to feel a lot more open and peaceful. My next tip is one of my favorites, and that is to rotate out your toys. I used to have a whole huge like 4x4 unit with bins up the wazoo, plus bins over here, plus bins along the wall, just filled with toys. And in a small space, it gets crazy very quickly unless you've like trained the kids to only pick 1 or 2 bins out. But for me, I like to rotate it up and just have a couple bins of toys in here at a time. And that way we're not like getting overwhelmed by the amount of toys. We're not having toys all over the floors that they have to clean up and you have to fight the kids on. And it just feels a lot more open if you have fewer things. And you know, I'm all about the minimalism right now, and I think kids play so much better with fewer toys. So just rotating them, whether you have a big space or not, is just a really good idea. But when you have a small space, I think it's almost essential so that you're not getting driven crazy by all the amount of toys everywhere. Another thing I've done to be really creative with a small space is to have little nooks and crannies that add interest to the space, as well as give kids different areas to play, especially if you have little toddlers who are getting into everything. It allows the bigger kids to have somewhere else to play. Along this wall with our fireplace, we've added these 2 areas along the side and added, you know, a piece of wood with some foam, and then we stapled fabric around it so that the kids can actually go up there to play. And so that's what we call our up high space. And toddlers can't climb up there and babies can't climb up there, but the bigger kids who are able to safely can climb up there and play without the little ones getting into everything. So if they want to do like magnetic tiles, they can go up there and build, and then the little ones aren't destroying it. If there's a child that just needs some space, they go up there. Down in our basement, we have 2 separate rooms, so sometimes I'll gate one off, and if kids want to do building with blocks, they'll go in there, and I'll keep the destructive children in the other room, and I can switch things up. We also have a little space underneath our stairs down there that we can switch up. And so just having these different areas, building them yourself, maybe even using a piece of furniture to divide it out for like a little reading nook or something, can really help break up the space a little bit so that kids have a place to go when they need some alone time or they don't want the little ones destroying their stuff. I just think that's really important for kids, especially in a small space. Another great tool to have is an octagon playpen. I don't have enough space in my daycare to actually have a permanent place for the babies and toddlers to play with like a gate set up all the time. But I do use my octagon playpen, and I love it because I can easily open it, I can easily close it, it's easy to store, and it's a lot of space inside so that a toddler doesn't feel like confined to a really small area. And sometimes I use them in reverse. So for example, just this past week, I had the kids playing, and we were doing stations, and I had a block station, but I wanted the baby and the toddler to be able to kind of roam free. So because sometimes they don't like the octagon playpen, I actually put the blocks in the octagon playpen and then pick the bigger kids up to play in there so they could play with blocks without the little ones destroying it. So you can use it in a lot of ways. I also use them for sensory bins so that my whole room doesn't get full of rice and beans and pasta and stuff like that. But they're really, really handy to have, especially in a small space when you need some division between kids, but you don't have anything like permanently installed because you just don't have the space to do that. Another tip is just to go to other areas. So you may not have the biggest space in the world, but maybe sometimes you just go to your living room to do a dance party, or bring a few bins of toys to a different area of your house, your dining room, your kitchen, a bedroom, who knows, just bring them to a different area of your house just to switch up the space, especially if you're trapped inside long periods of time. it can be nice just to get out of the one room you're always in and go to a different space of the house. I'd highly recommend this. Sometimes we go up to the dining room to do crafts instead of doing them in here, just to switch it up and make things more interesting. And it just helps you feel like you're in a different space than being trapped in the same place all the time. I mentioned a little bit ago stations. Stations have been a lifesaver for me. We do them a lot in the afternoon when I have all the kids here and they're, they've just woken up, they've just had snack, they have this huge surge of energy that was kind of diminished in the morning, and they're excited because they're going home soon, and so it's just prime time for fighting and stuff like that. So if we can't go outside, we do stations. So I will set up a few different stations in this room. I might have like drawing at the table, or puzzles or books or magnetic things. It just really depends. I just grab different things. I might have like a block station in another area, and then I might have like the baby dolls and dress up stuff in another area. And I literally just plop them down and I say, these are our 3 areas. I assign a few kids to each area, and then I set a timer for 10 to 15 minutes, and they stay in their center or their station for that amount of time. And then when the timer goes off, they switch. I sometimes just let the babies roam around. I'll sometimes put them in the octagon playpen, or sometimes I'll put them in high chairs and, give them something to do, like paint in a bag, or give them a snack or something like that. And that's a really good time to have foldable high chairs as well, is another tip I'd give. If you have a foldable high chair, they're really easy to store and pull out or bring outside. So that's just a little bonus tip. But I really like doing stations just because it keeps the kids contained to one area instead of just running around. I don't know about your groups, but my groups just like to run around and like get a toy from here and then go over here and then go over there and then go over there. So at least when we have stations, they have to stay in their station for that amount of time, and it actually helps them really deepen their play because they're kind of limited to what they have, and so they really get imaginative with it. They get more into it, and it just helps them kind of calm down and focus instead of like running around bouncing off the ceiling in a really small space. So I'd highly recommend stations, especially when you're going crazy stuck inside. And then lastly, when you can, get outside. I get outside as much as I possibly can, even in the winter when it's frozen over. Like if there was a period of time this winter when our backyard was just frozen solid, just icy, so we couldn't really play out there because the kids would slip. So we went for walks when the, ice was melted off of the sidewalks. We get outside as much as we possibly can, but depending on your weather, sometimes it's not always possible. It's too cold, it's too rainy, it's too whatever. So I understand that you can't always get outside, but obviously if you can, that's the best place for kids to be, getting fresh air, playing outside. And you can go to parks, you can play in your driveway, you can play in a backyard. You don't need a ton of space, but outdoors is usually a lot bigger than indoors. So highly recommend you get outside when you can. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if there are any other daycare day related videos you want me to film, and I would be happy to add them to my list. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye guys.